I was just reading an article about a waitress who was fired because a customer had left a $5,000 tip, and there was some disagreement about whether or not the tip needed to be shared with her colleagues. I want to point out something. There's a lot of discussion on who was right and who was wrong about it, but the real problem, and this is a little bit subtle, the real problem is here in the United States, we love to talk about being progressive and treating everyone equally. Well, the problem is that it's all the red tape of needing to be equal to all sorts of classes, right? You got discrimination against race, against gender, against what people identify as. Now, it forces businesses to lower their standard to a common denominator so they can say that, well, we fired this person for not sharing their tip, and we fire everybody else for not sharing their tip, right? So all this anti-discrimination red tape basically forces people to stop using their human judgment, right? So I got to think about, I love giving good tips when I get good service, especially because I have dietary restrictions. Anybody who goes above and beyond and is sensitive to that, I'll tip very well. Now, the ironic thing about this whole saga is that tips perpetuate discrimination in the first place. And I know this because of my own situation. I often go out to eat alone. I am happily single, and oftentimes when I go to a restaurant, I treat it almost like a one-person date, right? Just like how some people would go on a date with a significant other. Unfortunately, the treatment is very different, right? I get treated as second-class citizen. I go out on a Friday night like that, right? I call it going on a solo sexual date. Oh my God. I get treated worse than some of the other non-conventional couples, right? I need to travel to Utah sometime because in Utah you have group marriages. I want to see how I fare against those people on a typical date, right? I'd love to see, just as a comparison. I've compared myself against heterosexuals. I've compared myself against homosexuals. I've never compared myself against those group marriages in Utah. And so people don't give me the best service. Not surprisingly, I'm not in a good mood to tip. You know, people sometimes assume that those with dietary restrictions might not tip very well. Sometimes. When they go above and beyond, I tip very well. When I was living in New York City, I lived there for 9 months. I used to frequent a Japanese restaurant, but one of the waiters really ticked me off. I was hoping to try this new dish, but I needed to ask about some ingredients. And as soon as he heard I had some allergies, he's from Japan, and he exaggerated his Japanese accent just to avoid answering me on something. And so I didn't tip him very well. I think the meal came out to $38.50 or something like that, and I rounded it up to $40. And he didn't realize that I wanted to give him a bad tip. He thought I had made a mistake. He chased me out the door saying, excuse me, and he exaggerated his accent even more. Excuse me. And he explained that I had only tipped him 5%, and I just kept walking. And as soon as I got to the subway station, I laughed out of control about the situation. Now, that Japanese restaurant was on my way from work to the subway station. I used to frequent that a lot, but I would peek my head in there and I would see the waiter and I would go somewhere else after that. Just had a bad experience. And then I learned about there's a college girl who was working there on I think it was Thursday nights, and I learned to go there every Thursday night. And she was much more patient with answering my questions about dietary restrictions. At the time, what was really exciting was she had just started investing, and I was telling her about how, because at the time gold prices were so high, the premium on some of the gold coins was relatively low, and I thought that was very safe, because if we were wrong about gold, the premiums would hold up a whole lot better than the gold coins. And obviously in 2013 we were wrong about the raw gold, but had you bought quarter eagle coins or half eagle coins, you would have done quite well, right? And so I frequented that place for another few months after that, and then right before I left New York, I tipped her a 1/10 ounce gold coin. So I'm not shy about tipping when the service warrants it. Good thing I tipped at Gold Koi because her colleagues probably assumed that it was like a really lousy tip, right? Like a penny or something like that, right? Anyway, just a really odd story, right? If you really want to practice zero tolerance on discrimination, what we really should do is get rid of the tipping structure altogether, right? Not have these oddball rules that prevent us from using any sort of good human judgment.